This is Marriage on the Half Shell, Real and Exposed. Tonight, we are going to talk about intimacy, but not sex. Well, we'll talk about sex a little bit. But we found this chart, and for the life of us, we cannot find this chart anywhere. But just look up, there's 5 primary types of intimacy in a relationship, and you can find it pretty much anywhere. We found some examples, but not this specific example that we're going to use here tonight. This is something I grabbed off of Twitter or Instagram or something, and I printed it, and it just looked like an interesting topic. So intimacy is a whole lot more than sex.
Right.
So that's what we're going to be talking about, and we will go into, a little bit of the physical, but come on, everybody knows about that physical side of intimacy. But we're going to talk about it in terms of where it should be prioritized, not how to go about achieving it. We've already covered that in another podcast anyway.
Achieving
physical, yeah.
Right.
So, I just thought this was interesting because I had never thought about it. Like, you and I practice all 5, pretty much almost on a daily basis.
Yeah, some aspect of...
Yeah, some aspect of all of them.
Of the areas.
Yeah.
Right.
So I never thought about breaking it down this way. And when we kind of had a little meeting last night, we were kind of discussing it. I laid it out kind of in a priority. And I looked at it more like, how do you use intimacy to get to know a person, to know if they're the one that you want to be committed to? Right. So in terms of dating, courtship, however you want to refer to it, that kind of thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. We talked about the 5 areas.
Mm-hmm.
We'll walk through them, but
right.
Say if you're starting out dating, courtship, or whatever,
right.
like you said, that you generally walk through these in a certain order.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
And then
you should walk through them in a certain order.
Right.
That's our
take.
Our opinion on it. Yeah.
Right. And most people generally do, and they also overlap. Some of these, like I said, overlap a little bit. So, but then once you have reached the point of being married,
right,
and continuing forward, it's like you're basically building on each of the areas.
Yeah.
And they support each other. And,
yes.
And so on. So, so we'll go through the order.
Right. And I'll just say,
let's start with
this is the order that we put them in. But we were just having this little discussion before we started recording here. Our culture, Hollywood, media, social media, all of that stuff, actually would dictate that you almost do this in reverse of the way that we are going to discuss it.
Well, almost.
Right? Yeah,
pretty much. They
much.
address the physical.
Yes.
So, okay. Let's just put it out there.
Okay.
The physical part, really, as it goes to sensual, sex, that sort of thing, we're saying, and we've said this before, should be last.
Yes.
After marriage.
Yeah.
And last.
Yeah.
Because it's supported by the other parts
mm-hmm.
of intimacy.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the culture says that's first. That's your primary goal right now, especially when you're young.
Yes.
Just all the sex and
the body count
and
God,
all
I hate
that.
That term,
right?
Ugh.
And then maybe you think about getting married later.
Yeah.
I think young women are finding out, when they finally want to settle down, and they've got this high partner count, that all the good men are like, I don't want somebody who is just promiscuous.
Yeah.
And so they don't get married, right? And
yeah.
so they can't get married.
Right.
Or everything is related to physical in the culture, but the culture doesn't really tell you anything about the other aspects of intimacy.
Right.
That was the other point I was going to make, is the culture doesn't teach you anything.
No. No.
Other than telling you what to do
Right.
about physical sex or sex and
Yeah.
the physical part of it.
Right.
So anyway, I'll let you go through the order. And
Okay. So just
go from there.
quickly, I'll run through. This is how we prioritize them, and then we'll kind of break them down one at a time. So the first one would be what they call experiential, meaning you just start dating someone, and so you try some new things. You go to new restaurants. You go on adventures together.
Right.
You're spontaneous. You share experiences.
Yes.
Right. This is how you get to know somebody, and you start building a friendship with them as you do things together.
Yeah.
Right. You're dating. That's what
Right.
you're doing. Right. And then from there, number 2 is intellectual, meaning you're dating this person on a regular basis. So now you're starting to have some more, some deeper conversations about life, about,
Right.
What you believe, about your opinions, about, what you're curious about. You have deeper conversations with someone, right?
Yes.
And then number 3 is spiritual. If you want to have a committed relationship with somebody, you've got to know what they believe,
Right.
right? You can't.
The base worldview. I
Yes.
guess is word.
Yeah.
that they view.
Values, what their values are.
Yeah. Where do that?
Yeah.
Well, values come from what you believe.
Right.
At this root level.
Yeah.
And you can believe. We'll talk about beliefs
Yeah.
as we get to it.
Yeah.
But you can believe certain things that are interesting, but don't. They're not your core.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
we're talking about your core.
Right.
Right. Spirit. So that's why it talks about spiritual.
Yes.
Why are we here? Is there a God?
Yes.
That sort of thing.
Right.
And that worldview, in a sense, determines what your values are, and some of your other less important beliefs.
Right. Right.
But we've said before, if you are not on the same page when it comes down to this level, that root level of belief, then you're going to have a really hard time maintaining a relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. You're going to have a hard time making critical decisions about your relationship, about where you should live, about how many kids you should have, about how you should raise your children. I mean, you really
What are you
do
gonna
need
teach
to be
your
on the,
children?
yeah. What are you going to teach them? Yeah.
And that sort of thing.
Right.
Okay.
Number 4 is emotional. So, this one this is probably the area that I struggled with the most between us, because vulnerability is not my thing. It's not. As a matter of fact, you are likely the only person that I'm really that vulnerable with anyway.
Uh-huh.
I don't talk about yucky things with other people. I don't know.
Okay.
And that is because we have this foundation of I trust you.
Yep.
And that's emotional intimacy, is being able to trust the person you're with, that you can tell them anything,
Yeah.
right? And that you will still be respected,
Yeah.
right? And that this is someone you can go to get empathy or to get your butt kicked. I mean, sometimes you need somebody who's going to say, tell you you're wrong. And that's also a very vulnerable place to be, is
Sure.
to have your partner tell you, no, you're wrong about that. We need to correct it. But still,
how it's done.
but that's where the trust comes in.
Yeah.
Like, I trust you that you're not going to steer me in the wrong direction. If you're going to tell me I'm wrong, then you're going to tell me why I'm wrong and how to correct it, right?
Yeah.
So that's also a part of that. And then number 5 is the physical. And, it's just, we all know what physical intimacy is. Everybody does. Everybody experiences it, whether you're in a relationship or not. You hug your friends You hug your parents. You know, your nieces and nephews. You know, you play with them. It's all of that, and then sex. You
No.
know, so
With your partner,
yes, of course,
and we're saying spouse,
right,
not partner.
right,
And this is where some of the overlap comes, right?
Right.
Just to point out, physical, like holding hands, giving each other a kiss or whatever after the date,
yeah,
that sort of thing. You're still dating, you're not married yet. Yeah, there's some of that.
yeah,
It's not the. There's a lot to sex that I'm not going to get into here. That is related to being trusted and trustworthy.
absolutely, yeah,
Vulnerable.
yeah. You
that
are.
sort of thing.
That's what my dad told me that. Shortly after I moved away from my dysfunctional home and moved in with him, I don't remember how we got on the topic, but he said, Abby, you will never be more vulnerable with a man than when you get naked and jump in bed with him. It stuck with me. I mean, it's the truth. That's the
true.
most vulnerable you will ever be.
Yeah.
And it requires all of the rest of this to be in play, right?
Right.
To be that vulnerable.
And this is why we say, just to hammer the point, this is why we say sex during marriage, not before.
Right.
Is that you have this foundation of the other
Right.
things that we're talking about,
Right.
That protects it,
Yeah.
right? So that you can be in that vulnerable position with each other.
Right. And just to be 100% honest, we didn't wait.
No, we didn't.
And that's actually one, well, it's a big mistake that we made, obviously, but it's a mistake that a lot of couples make. And one of the biggest problems is once you introduce that into your relationship starts to revolve around it.
Yes.
And you don't work on the other
right.
forms of intimacy that really need to be built. That is definitely something that we did. If we had been working on the other four
And more mature.
and more, well, yeah. I mean, if we'd been working on the other four, then a lot of the problems we had in our marriage could have been at least avoided.
Right, or at least we would have been more
prepared. Right.
Right, because we've talked in previous episodes about, getting your shit together,
Yeah.
right, before you commit to this
Yeah.
person
Yeah.
for the rest of your life.
Right.
If you bring your baggage in and you refuse to deal with it, then it's going to come out and it's going
Yeah.
to cause problems.
Yeah.
So we're saying here is like, if you do these things in the right order, and your relationship doesn't just revolve around jumping in bed together,
Yeah.
your relationship will be much stronger, at least.
Mm-hmm.
And if some of the baggage comes out, like I don't think you really knew what was going on
No, I didn't.
internally until later in our marriage. So we had to work through that
Right.
at the same time building these things.
Yeah, I mean, I did not have the trust in you that I should have.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I didn't think that I could be vulnerable with you.
That's
Because we hadn't, well, obviously we'd had 6 kids and it was homeschooling and, it's just like, it was insane, right? It was, it was, it was crazy.
Life was busy.
So, but there were some other things in play that prevented us from building trust and vulnerability in our marriage so that I felt like I could,
Right.
tell you things that needed to be done. But anyway, so, you start with number 5. If you start with number 5, if you start with the physical, you could find out very quickly that this person is great in bed. What did I just say? Great in bed, but terrible at the dinner table.
Right.
Exactly. And that's no way to build a marriage.
Definitely not.
Because you're going to spend more time at the dinner table than you are having sex. It's just a fact.
Yeah. And the culture says the culture says try each other out in a sense, live together,
Okay.
have sex before so you kind of know what you're getting into with this person and all that stuff. And it's like, really, well, statistically, people who live together before marriage get divorced more
Yeah,
often.
they do.
It's just simple fact
Yeah,
there.
they do.
Because you don't develop this mutual respect for each other.
Mm-hmm.
Jordan Peterson talks about, well, I'm going to live with you because you're the best that I can find right now.
Yeah.
But if something better comes along, I'm free to go pursue that, and you can do the same thing.
Right.
You can dump me whenever somebody better comes along. It's
Right.
like, how in the world can you even tell that somebody's better,
Right.
and so on.
Yeah.
But anyway, that has to do with living together, but also the sex part as well. Well, we've always said, you develop, you learn about each other, and you learn about how to have the pleasure of sex and make it more exciting. Don't just assume it's a rut. That's what the culture also says.
Oh, yeah.
Once you get
Yeah,
married,
yeah.
sex is just this rut.
Yeah.
And you gotta
Well,
do it
yeah,
with
like
kids or whatever.
we've watched TV shows where the couple is, they're dating and it's exciting and the sex is exciting and they're doing all kinds of things, and then as soon as they get married, it becomes routine.
Yeah.
You
And
know.
so part of your job at being married is to make that not so.
Right. Well, I mean, we've had seasons like that in our, but
And
with the
yes,
6
seasons
kids
happens
and
with kids and all that stuff.
lack of sleep and babies and
Right.
all kinds of all that stuff.
But so the strength of your marriage isn't based on sex; it's
Right.
based on these other areas.
Right.
More so.
Yeah.
It's not. I mean, it's not just a duty to stay married. It's this: you want to be married. You want to stay together. You want to make things work.
Mm-hmm.
You've got this partner in life that we go through life together as a team
Yeah.
and face problems together.
Right.
And if you just base it on the physical, then that's really all you have. And you can't make the cake with just the icing, right? There's no support,
Right.
and things fall apart. So
Yeah.
anyway, that's
So, okay, so you're dating someone, right? You just started dating. You've made the decision that number 5, the physical, is going to wait. We're going to build these other things first.
Yep.
Right? So, you go on some dates. You make it a routine. You have some consistency with that. If you want to build a relationship with someone, you need to be seeing them and talking to them on a consistent basis, right? And you do spontaneous things. You plan adventures together. You do fun stuff in the beginning.
Yep.
And you're getting to know this person in different situations. Like
Yeah.
what do they like to do? What do they not like to do? What are they afraid of? What are they, what drives them?
Yeah, and when you do things together, if you pick them wisely,
Yeah.
you do get to know whether you're compatible,
Yes.
right? Do you have common shared interests? And not everything has to be a common shared interest.
Right.
We've talked about that before,
Yeah.
where you can learn from the other person
Yeah.
about new things, and that's great. But do you like doing certain things together?
Right.
But if you find you have nothing, this is kind of part of the vetting
Right. Yeah.
that we've talked about doing. It's like, can I make a life with this person because this is the way they are and this is the way I am? Can we make it work? And don't fool yourself into thinking you can make it work because they're handsome or beautiful. That sort of thing.
Right.
You know, you got to find out who they are,
Yeah.
and often putting each other into situations, experiences or adventures, I should say.
Yeah.
You that's when you find out a little bit about people that they just won't come out and tell you right away, or they don't think to come out and tell you. I'm not saying people are hiding, but you know, put people under stress and you find out who they really are.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
But anyway, so then you move on to 2.
Yeah. 2 is the intellectual. So you've been dating for a while. So now you start to have those deeper conversations,
Yeah.
you know, about life and the direction you want it to go, and, you know, how you express your creativity, and, you know, what goes on in your head, you know, those kinds of things. You start to bring things out and talk about them that are a little bit exposing, right? Right. And I would actually, 2 and 3 are the support for everything else, right? Because when you're sharing your opinions and beliefs, you're also going to start to talk about your values, you know, like where you stand on certain things, and, you know, are we going, you know, which church are we going to go to? How are we going to raise our children? All of those things.
Are we going to have children?
Are we going to have children?
How many?
Yes.
How do we raise them? How do we school them?
Yeah. Like you and I, we knew from the jump that we wanted a bigger family. There was some negotiation in the beginning about how many, and we ended up with 6.
Right.
Right. But we actually knew before we got married, while we were engaged, that we were going to homeschool.
Yeah.
We already knew that because, you know, if this was 34 years ago, we could already see the direction that the public schools were headed in. My stepmother, who is one of my heroes, took my youngest brother out of school, and she told us why. And it just really made us step back and think about,
Yep.
okay, is this, how are we going to handle this, right?
Yeah.
We didn't expect to have babies right away, which is what happened.
Yeah.
But we already had a plan in place. We already knew.
Yeah.
We already knew
this
that
is
that's what we were gonna
discussions
do.
we had while we were engaged.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't just the dating thing. But you know, before you, I think before we got engaged, we both knew we wanted kids and kind of talked about how many and
Right.
You know, so we're not saying don't find out, because you might not want to get engaged to somebody who, if you want kids and the other person just absolutely doesn't. So
Right.
you're
You are
gonna
not
change
okay.
their
You are
mind,
not
you know?
going to change their. Don't.
Or you shouldn't
go,
take that risk.
No, you should not take that
Chances
risk.
are they won't.
Yeah. Yeah.
But anyway, keep going.
So anyway, yeah. So 2, like I said, 2 and 3, intellectual and spiritual. Those 2 are kind of the support system for everything else, particularly the spiritual. Because if you diverge on values, you're going to have big problems. There's going to be problems.
And this is where,
What?
we can either come back to it or do it now.
What's that?
The ones where we were talking about, looking at our notes.
Oh, right. Okay. So, so you and I, these 2 are silly.
But that's
So one thing you and I kind of diverge on is the vaccine issue, right?
Right.
And that's kind of a recent thing for me. It hasn't been our whole, like, all of my kids got the
all the big 9.
That's what you call them, right? The big 9, the
the
vaccine.
shots. Yeah. But not every. Back when we were having kids, and they were young, there was the big 9, right? MMR, DPT.
Well,
tetanus.
they introduced
Yeah,
chicken
that's what
pox
they-
later, which I wish I hadn't done. But
Okay,
anyway.
But chicken, you know, now they have they have a lot more.
Yes, they do.
HPV
Yeah.
And the
Hep.
chicken, like I said,
Yeah.
chicken pox and hepatitis and
Yeah.
things like that. You know, but anyway, back then it was just those 9.
Yes.
MMR, DPT.
The usual. The
usual.
Yeah.
34 years ago.
Right.
Anyway, so
So
we had our kids vaccinated.
yeah,
But now when we look at the unknown virus of unknown origin, you know, we're glad that we did not get that vaccine. And
yes,
you know, all our kids are all out and they're adults, so it's just us
yeah,
talking about this, and this isn't a show about that particular thing,
right,
but we chose not to do it because we've had it twice,
yeah,
2 different strains, so I think
Yeah.
we're pretty good.
yeah.
My doctor has told us we're pretty good, and he's not said you need to go get the shot anymore.
Well, see, here's another area you and I diverge on because I don't trust doctors either.
Yeah, right, but
Anyway,
Anyway.
this is like an area where we can have spirited discussions
spirited,
and
yes.
and we disagree,
Mhm.
you know.
But I still say, you know, the big 9. Let's keep that going.
Yeah. Yeah, see, this
I mean,
is where
think about it. I mean, like they quit giving the smallpox vaccination. I don't know if I ever got it.
we must have because they stopped giving it in the early 70s.
So we might have gotten it. And now it's kind of like, you know, should we bring that one back? I mean,
No.
I don't know. But the point is, I'm not advocating for it.
Yeah.
But the point is, we can have this discussion about
Yeah.
it. We can both agree that this particular vaccine we're not going to get.
Yeah.
But the other ones, you'd say, nothing.
No.
And I'd say, well, maybe some of these. But anyway,
But see,
I
here,
think the
okay.
risk is low, and you know, we don't have kids, so we don't actually have to make that decision,
Right.
And
But-
our kids can make their own decisions.
Yes, and yeah,
About
so
their own
and
kids.
they've diverged too. They've gone in different directions with that particular topic. But anyway, the point is, for me, that's a very strong conviction. For you, it's also a very strong conviction. We have separate views.
Mm-hmm.
We can have spirited discussions. It's not a point of
It's not a contentious
contention.
point.
No, not
It's
really.
not a core value,
No,
right?
no.
And we were joking around last night, you know, talking about what kind of beliefs can you have that are not core values
Yes.
versus things that are core values.
Right. So yeah.
Core values are like, are you a Christian dating a Muslim? Are you a Christian dating an atheist? Are you Muslim dating an atheist?
Also things like,
It's a
do you
religion,
believe or
right?
do you believe in abortion?
Right.
You know,
So-
that those are some
well, that's a value.
heavy-
It's a heavy thing, but that's a value that comes from your religious belief,
yes.
right?
Yeah.
And, or even atheists might not think abortion is right. You know,
There are a few, yeah.
What's right and wrong?
Yeah. Yeah, what's right and wrong. That's
you know,
exactly it.
comes from your core beliefs.
Yeah.
And all we're saying is if your core beliefs aren't at least compatible, close,
Yeah.
then it's going to cause problems later.
Yeah.
You know, and all you're doing now is dating and having some fun together, but you're not going to have a future.
Yeah.
But these other things, what are we talking about?
Flat
You know,
earthers.
say if you're dating somebody who's a flat earther, and it's like, well, that's one of those things where you kind of, you're not a flat earther, but they are, and you think, is this something I can deal with?
Right.
Right? Because it's not a contentious thing, right? It doesn't
Yeah.
really change the way we live our lives.
Right.
Okay. What was the other one? Chemtrails.
Yeah.
We were just joking around and coming up with stuff like that. It's like,
Yeah.
can I marry someone who believes that the government is putting stuff into the atmosphere out of planes? And as a scientist, I'll tell you, I don't think so. I don't think you do either.
You know, I mean, I kick that one around every once in a while
that's
because
kind of a fun
the
one.
government's not to be trusted in
True.
any way, shape. That's just
I
okay.
get
Here's
that.
this is me. You know, I have to push back on things, but anyway. So yeah, I mean,
I don't know how we got onto strip clubs though. We were
we were talking about trust. We were talking about building trust because I listened to a podcast yesterday, and someone wrote in a question about, my husband went to a strip club. How will I ever trust him again?
Uh-huh.
You know, it's like, eh,
So that's a different
so
subject.
yeah, it is.
Where you either build or destroy trust
Yes,
based on doing that sort of thing.
yes, yeah. Like what kind of, like if your husband travels for work,
Right.
you know, you've got to have that foundation.
Trust.
You've got to have that trust foundation if your husband travels for work.
And he's got to be trustworthy.
Trustworthy.
Have that kind of.
Or if this, you know, the wife travels for work.
Vice versa, yeah.
Whatever it is. Yeah, there's got to be. So, but once you have the, you know, these deep conversations and you've discussed your values and you feel like I can trust this person, right? And I've maybe told them shared some things with them that I have not shared with other people. That's the vulnerability, right? Mm-hmm. Because there are things that you know about me that literally no one else does, right? And vice versa. Yeah, right? But that's because I respect you and I also trust you. Mm-hmm. You know, you know that I'm not going to go to my friends and blab about conversations that we have here at home. And I know that you're not going to do that either, right?
Yeah. And also, we can trust each other that we're not going to go out with our friends and just complain.
No, we don't do that
when we
either.
have an issue, right?
No,
we're
we
going
don't
to
do
work
that
on that.
Yes.
We do not gossip about each other.
No.
We do not tell other people anything but positive, right? And we're not.
Well, yeah, I've shared before.
It doesn't mean we might not say, you know, search for advice or whatever, but we're not going to gossip about the other person and join in the spouse bashing that can happen.
Yeah. Yeah, I've told you the most negative thing that any of my friends have ever heard about you is that you snore.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's pretty good. Okay.
So that's the first 4, right? And like I said, we're not going to go really too deep into number 5 because it's a natural thing that's going to happen, you know, once you're committed to someone and you're married, that's going to happen. But one thing I think we need to say here is that, like I said before, the way it's portrayed in social media and, you know, Hollywood and all this other nonsense is that it's super exciting to have sex before you're married.
Right.
There's some truth to that. I mean, I'm
sure.
I'm
it brings
sure.
immediate pleasure.
Yeah, the dopamine and all the everything does it. You know, it stimulates all the right hormones.
Right.
Carbonates your hormones. That was the phrase we heard. So, but too many couples start with that and then try to work backwards through all the rest of this.
Yeah.
And this is where the problems come in. Whereas if they would just start with one, you know, and then move from experiential to intellectual to spiritual, and then emotional will get tied in to the rest of this, right? Then once you're married, that physical intimacy is so much more exciting.
Yep. Well,
you know?
Yeah. I mean, you've proven yourselves to each other, and really, as I mentioned earlier, we're not saying when we say move through these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4 before marriage. You're building on each one, right?
Yeah.
So you start with the first one, and then it kind of overlaps a little, and you start doing intellectual and then spiritual.
Yeah.
And you keep doing the experiential, right? You keep going.
Yeah.
Out,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You keep having the intellectual discussions. You keep exploring spiritual. You keep developing respect, and you're doing all of it. And that's the point. Is once you hit the point of once you hit marriage, then you've developed, and you're doing 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And we're only presenting them in an order that we think serves people best.
Right.
Right. But as I've also said, you know, they overlap somewhat. So then you keep once you've done one, you keep doing it, and you start with 2, and you keep doing 1 and 2, and all that. I did also want to point out, you know, since we keep saying sex is after marriage, that does not mean that you can't talk about it some,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because you want to learn kind of some of what you're doing and what's going to happen,
Mm-hmm.
or what you want to be doing.
Right.
And then, of course, once you're married, you would explore. I mean, that's part of the fun of it, is exploring the different things related
Right.
to sex and all that. And all I'm saying is that to put that how can I say it's an exciting aspect
Mm-hmm.
of marriage,
Yeah. It's supposed to be.
and it is supposed to be. Yes, it's not a rut or boring or
Yeah, that's the other
after
thing
the
Hollywood
honeymoon-
will. Yeah, Hollywood
yeah,
will
I
do.
mean, the whole honeymoon
Phase. Yeah.
ends and things get boring. It's like, it doesn't have to be that way. Just the hormones have calmed down after a year to 18 months after you've gotten married.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that you it's just different hormones now. You've switched over.
Yeah.
And then you have to intellectually work at making it exciting, trying new things.
Yeah.
Always always with this area, or with trust. Go as far as you each want to.
Yeah.
And that sort of thing.
Right.
But anyway, I'll start the battle. But I did want to mention that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So, when you're dating, obviously what we're saying is you move through these, except for number 5. After you get married, you're doing all 5.
Right. And you keep doing it.
And you keep doing all 5, right? You keep working on all 5 of these. Kind of simultaneously, right? I mean, you and I, we never stopped dating. We always have dated.
Right.
Right? We've always gone on overnighters to different places, and
Well, we have a date once a week.
we do have a date once a week, but once or twice a year we go away,
Yeah.
and we'll be gone
For
for
a
a few,
weekend or,
a weekend or sometimes longer, you
Right.
know. And we always try to pick somewhere that we maybe haven't been before.
Yep.
So that would be trying new things and sharing new experiences and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
The intellectual and the spiritual for us is pretty much daily. I mean, we have a lot of good, deep conversations.
Yeah. We talk about a lot of.
We talk about everything.
A lot of
Yeah.
everything, but important stuff.
Yeah.
And not important. Well, I don't want to say not important. It's important, but it's small, and it's just important to us. And
Yeah.
then there's big issues,
Right.
and then we solve all the world's problems.
Yeah, we do. But we do go on a date once a week, but we also take walks almost every day.
You're right.
And then we're conversing about how our day is going, or whatever it is, which sounds mundane,
Mm-hmm.
but that checking in on each other, that's part of intimacy,
Right.
right?
You check in. You show care.
I need to know what you need,
Yeah.
and vice versa.
Yeah.
So that's
You do that.
and we try to pray together pretty
Yeah.
often, right? And
We do.
I have tried to make a habit of praying for you every morning when I wake up.
Yep. We pray for each other.
Yes, we do.
Together and separately.
Yeah, we do. And we pray for our kids and,
Yeah.
grandkids and
All
all of that. Right. But that just, and that ties into, like, if I'm having a really bad day emotionally, I know I have somewhere to go.
Yes.
I know I can come home and I can yell, scream, cry on your shoulder, throw things, whatever it is I need to do, and you're going to help me work it through, right? Yeah. So, but, I think that was one of the primary takeaways I want from this is that, like I said, when you're dating, work through them. This is how you determine if this is the person you're going to marry. But after you're married, you got to do all 5. Continue to do all 5. And I think I've mentioned before, Dr. Peterson talks about the 90-90
Yes.
90 minutes a week,
Bring that up. Yep.
where you're discussing
Logistics.
the logistics, the kids need to go here and this practice and this school thing and what are meals this week and who's going grocery shop, all that kind of logistical household stuff. And then 90 minutes a week
just alone.
alone.
The two of you.
Yeah.
Get a babysitter
And that's
go
at the
out.
least. I mean, our dates were closer to 2 to 3 hours usually.
Yeah. I mean, it depends on the babysitter.
Yes. Yeah.
And all that. But
Like
yeah,
my daughter and son-in-law are now back into going once a week. They have to take the baby with them because she doesn't like us enough to stay with us yet. That's starting to change, we hope. But
I don't
anyway,
think it's changing, but it takes a little bit. And that's
but
fine.
they go out once a week and they'll go out for a couple of hours.
Yep.
And they go and they have dinner or they go for a walk or they go have coffee or whatever, go shopping, whatever it is.
Yep.
So,
So 90 minutes,
yeah,
2 times a week,
right.
those 2 different things.
And well, it doesn't have to be. I mean, the 90 minutes of logistics doesn't have to be all in one go. I mean,
No, but it's
usually
he
not.
said, spend about 90 minutes
Yeah.
through the week, or maybe have a meeting that's bigger or whatever. But
Yeah.
whatever works for
yeah,
you
yeah,
and your family. I also wanted to bring up, it's like if you think you didn't start your marriage this way, most of us didn't.
no,
That doesn't mean you
Yeah.
can't start working through these. You're probably already doing some of it, but
yeah,
if you're intentional, you'll improve your marriage by intentionally working through these
Yeah.
things. Making sure your discussions are, for instance, just we ask each other, it's like, what did you learn something new?
yes,
And we'll talk about that thing,
yeah,
and that kind of starts other discussions, and they kind of go all over the place.
Right,
And
right.
You should let that happen.
yeah,
Ask each other what you think about something, and why. And
yeah,
you get there. You are getting to know each other a little bit
Yeah.
more, and you might learn something new that you didn't know. So, just because you didn't start your marriage this way, like us, we didn't start our marriage this way.
no,
Doesn't mean you can't start at any time.
yeah,
And then also on top of that, it's like if you've gotten into a rut, or life got busy because you just had a kid, or job change, or moving, or whatever, right? And this kind of slipped out of your focus. Bring it back,
yeah,
right? So you can always come back to this
yeah,
and keep working on these things. And that's the whole point, is to make your marriages the best it can be.
right.
So I'm talked out. Did you have
Yeah,
more?
no, I think we covered it. I mean, the only other notes here that I wrote down had to do with sex. And, well, okay, so I'll just briefly touch on this. One of the reasons that we believe it's important to wait, and we've already mentioned a couple of reasons, is men and women we approach sex differently.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So men, what did we read? They can be detached emotionally from the sexual experience. They can be, right?
Yeah, it just becomes this pleasure thing. It can be,
Yes.
right? But they're not connected to you.
Right.
as a
So
woman.
they will build a connection with a woman to get sex. And I know that sounds cheap and tawdry, but it's literally what it is.
And that doesn't mean they don't want the connection.
Right.
They're not just using the connection.
Right.
But that's why. Well, do the other.
Okay, so the
Say
flip
the other side.
for the flip side though, I mean, women, we use sex to make a connection with someone, right? We want that emotional connection with another human being, and we will misuse sex to
Right.
get that emotional connection.
Well, yes. I mean, like in the dating world, women will offer sex
Yeah.
for even on the first date these days,
Yeah.
thinking that they're going to be able to get a
Build a relationship.
Right? But that's not how it should work.
No.
And then men know that they have to build a connection. Women want the connection.
Yes.
So it's, so we're in a sense compatible in opposite directions.
Yeah, yeah.
So a man who respects women properly will know that he wants to build this connection first.
Yeah.
And women who understand connection and sex properly will not just jump right into bed with somebody.
Yeah.
In order to get the connection, they'll almost want the connection first.
Yeah.
And then that's kind of puts you in situations where you really learn about somebody. If
Right.
the guy is just after you for sex, then, and he's not going to change that, then, he's not going to be the one.
He's going to be the one who's great in bed and terrible at the dinner table, and
Right.
that's no way to build any kind of relationship.
Yeah.
So that's all we're going to say about the sexual part of it. Like I said, that just kind
We've
of
said a lot. But
yeah. Well, I mean, I'm hoping that we hit on the rest of this more than that. You know what
we
I mean?
did. Yeah. Okay.
So anyway, that I think that covers everything that we discussed.
All right.
So I hope that you found this helpful.
Yes. Go work on these areas and make your marriage better. That's what we're going to do right after we're done this.
Okay.
We're going to go do something together.
All right. This has been Marriage on the Half Shell, Raw and Exposed.